What's up, everyone? Online prep coach Alex Cooker here with thepepcoach.com. Finally making the GERD Barrett's esophagus reversal seminar. This took a little bit for me to make just because there's so many seminars and things I want to talk about. As we're kind of going through like this basic biology series, I think this fits right in there. So I guess this will go under the whole basic biology series, because if you understand the basics of, the pathophysiology with GERD, with acid reflux, with Barrett's esophagus, it all makes a lot of sense. I think the problem is if you read the research or look the traditional clinical route in diagnosis, it's almost irreversible and things aren't talked about in its reversal manner, which is kind of just because the textbooks, right? It's not the doctors talking about this. It's not the medical professionals. It's literally the textbooks are still 30 years old and they're updated every year, every couple of years, but two sentences change. Like it's not that updated, which is interesting because Lila is now, in that 6 to 7 age range, and they changed math. They changed how you pronounce words, which doesn't make sense to me because speech isn't really changing that much, but our understanding of medicine and reversing biology really is. So for all the parents out there, you'll know exactly what I mean. Let's go ahead and start. Again, we are going to be trying to and literally talking about reversing GERD. So what exactly is GERD? So if you look at this whole gastric problem, right? It's mainly because we have way too much hydrochloric acid that's going to basically coming up into the actual esophagus. When it gets into the esophagus, it starts to cause a lot of damage. As it's causing that actual damage, it starts to cause tissue fibrosis. So it tries to heal itself. So as it slowly gets destroyed and reheals and destroyed and reheals, if that happens long enough, it starts to enclose. If that happens long enough, you get what I had, which was Barrett's esophagus, which is where your throat, your esophagus slowly gets smaller, smaller, and smaller. And long term, what happens? So this keeps happening. It can go first to where you get actual Barrett's esophagus. And if you keep letting that go long enough, what happens? You literally get some type of an esophageal cancer, because cancer is just misfolded cells and proteins and cell structures that constantly take damage. So if you keep damaging an area, it's going to slowly over time become cancerous. You cannot continually impose those demands and never let them actually heal without cancers forming. So cancer really comes down. I know people say it's a metabolic dysfunction, this dysfunction. In reality, it's just misfolded proteins. So we are literally giving the chemical signal to change these cells. We're giving them the wrong signal, right? So that's essentially the process of what happens. So what causes the hydrochloric acid to be pushed up, right? Couple of different things going on here, mainly one of four. First thing that can happen, you can have a very low esophageal sphincter tone. So you have that lower esophageal sphincter right here, right? That's what that little valve that keeps the acid and keeps the hydrochloric acid and everything down. So if you have a low esophageal sphincter tone, then it's not strong enough. It opens back up. So the tone and the strength of that sphincter is a big one, number one. Number two, we can have things like an actual hiatal hernia. Now that one's pretty simple. That is whenever we essentially have the esophagus going past the hiatus, and that causes that hiatal hernia because it's sliding and moving in the wrong position. And then that causes more problems. One of them, which is the next thing, which also can cause pressure dysfunctions. And we'll actually put that in fourth, because in third, we have too high or too low hydrochloric acid. And then we have the actual intra-abdominal pressure, which can be another big one, right? So again, lower esophageal sphincter tone, too weak. We have a hiatal hernia, which is moving and sliding things in the wrong place. We have too little or too much hydrochloric acid, and then we have too much intra-abdominal pressure, right? People have done this. When you've squatted too much, you've thrown up afterwards because you're pressing so much in your stomach, right? The cool part about this, to understand one step further, because this all makes sense, right? Makes sense. These are the major four reasons. understanding what's going on with parietal cells in the gut, I think, is massively beneficial, because the standard care of practice is you go in, you get a PPI, so a proton pump inhibitor, and that's kind of it. And PPIs are not good or bad. Medications are not good or bad. Nothing works like that, but they're meant to be Band-Aids. PPIs, proton pump inhibitors, long-term cause polyps and basically cancers of the stomach. That's been proven in the research now for decades, I believe, and you see it in application all the time. PPIs were originally prescribed as Band-Aids. It's, hey, take this for 12 weeks, get some relief, and then fix your problems while you do the diet, and then come off. So PPIs, in that sense, amazing therapy. But when done long-term for years on end, that's when you kind of run into problems. I was going to say that phrase, you rob someone to pay someone. I don't know the phrase. I'm bad at that stuff. But you're basically Band-Aiding the problem to fix the gut, but then causing other gut dysfunctions in the process. So if we look under the hood, right, so this portion right here, what we're mainly looking at are these things called parietal cells. So if we kind of draw, and there's a couple of these, but we'll just make them very simple. We have, okay, now, these are histamine 2 receptors. These are actual proton pumps. So when we're looking at a proton pump inhibitor, what does that mean? That means it's going to be inhibiting that actual process. Now, what happens is as you push protons out, that can generate hydrochloric acid. As you stimulate histamine 2 receptors, that can then also push this process to push out more protons via those proton pumps, and then therefore cause what? More hydrochloric acid. So this is going to, over time, increase hydrochloric acid. So two things can happen. You either have overstimulation endogenously, naturally, or from a food or something you're causing, or taking in rather, to stimulate those histamine 2 receptors. And or, because both can happen, you can also be doing something, or just genetically be like that, like I was born, where you're just pumping out so many extra protons and having way too much hydrochloric acid in the same breath. And this is why GERD is so hard for many people to fix. If you have too low hydrochloric acid, what does it present as? It presents as GERD. You still have acid reflux because there's an influx response that happens, and then your body in a low proton and a low histamine-based environment can actually have the reverse effect and still produce way too much hydrochloric acid because it tries to compensate. So I think that's one of the biggest things that's somewhat misunderstood in the research, because people taking PPIs, proton pump inhibitors, which should be abolishing this process, they can still have GERD and acid reflux. How could that be? Because it's a balance. It truly is a balance of proton and histamine stimulation, not under stimulation. So this needs to be a balance. And because we're talking about balance, I almost have to bring in, just because I keep hearing this lately, and no one in particular, people just keep sending me clips from like 20 different people, and I don't know who they are, so it's not talking bad at anyone, but I keep hearing the word thermodynamics, which can't argue that, right? And people say thermodynamics, it's all about entropy, which is all about chaos, right? And then they equate that to quantum mechanics, which is the study of that randomness and the study of that chaos, right? And trying to basically guess. That's basically what quantum mechanics is. The problem with that is stopping it right there means nothing. That doesn't help us biologically. So instead, if we look at thermodynamics, which is entropy, which is chaos, chaos cannot exist without structure. So disorder cannot exist without order. The reason why I bring that up is because when people have this conversation, they say they hate the word balance because that's not how nature works. That's how everything in nature works. That's really what thermodynamics is. We're talking about biological thermodynamics. That is the biggest difference than just saying thermodynamics and entropy. That doesn't mean anything. It doesn't help anyone. So instead, reframe it this way. Reframe everything in biology in terms of balance. If you equate that and look at that from the thermodynamic equation, we're mainly looking at entropy, which is literally looking at, I'm going to do order. You know what I'm saying. Order and disorder, right? So we're going to have, you have to have order and disorder. Another way of thinking about that, Dr. Hans Selye, the book, The Stress of Life, that's the first book I tell everyone to read. Because if you never have a stressor, you never adapt. What does that sound like? Basic thermodynamics of biology, which means disorder is the stressor, the adaptation is the order. And then it cyclically goes through that process. That's what AMPK and mTOR is. That's what anabolism and catabolism are. So it all comes back to this concept of balance. I don't want to get too off track with that, but I just keep hearing the term thermodynamics and entropy thrown around kind of haphazardly. And this is what, I don't know if people are trying to say that but don't know it, or if they are saying it but don't understand it. Either way, it doesn't matter, not saying anything bad on anyone. I want to make sure we understand what's going on here, right? So you have to understand this concept of balance. This concept of thermodynamics, of entropy, of quantum mechanics is about this. And it's so perfect in the gut with parietal cells. Because how can you get GERD taking PPI? How can you get GERD if you have low stomach acid? Because there is the wrong balance, or there's no balance, or there's too much chaos, or there's too much disorder, right? So I think that makes sense. So either way, this is what we're looking at with GERD, the main causes, and then essentially what we're looking at pharmacologically, what happens in practice, and why the PPI route may not be the best way to go about fixing these things. So now we understand, but the application matters, because who cares if you understand without application? So let's look at a couple things here. First, we're looking at that esophageal sphincter tone, right? Because we want to improve this puppy. We want to make esophageal sphincter tone stronger. One of the things, I don't think anyone's ever done this, or at least I think I started it. If I didn't, credit to whoever started it, I believe I did, inversion table work, right? What happens with the inversion table? You go upside down. What does that force your body to do? Tighten that esophageal sphincter and get stronger if you hold it over time and progressively overload, right? Because if you're upside down, if that sphincter is so weak and loose, you're just gonna vomit all over yourself. That happened to me one time, actually. It's disgusting. But if you can go ahead and start with a basic drill like an inversion table, then it can massively, slowly over time, strengthen that valve and strengthen the tone of that sphincter muscle. So we would do something simple, and you can build up to this. Start low, every day do the inversion table just for a minute, and then 2 minutes, and slowly kind of build up. You can do it morning and noon, and morning, noon, and night. You can also do it after a big meal, because that's when there's a lot of intra-abdominal pressure, and it's gonna push a lot. So you might vomit at those points. We don't want to aim for any kind of vomit, any kind of spewing of our guts, but over time, we can play around with it. And remember, this is not progressive overload in the sense where you got to work up to like 20 minutes or whatever. You work up to a couple minutes at a time, do that a couple times per day. And over time, that sphincter doesn't need a lot of pressure. How many times as human beings are we upside down? Unless you're Dracula, never, right? So even just a couple minutes over the course of a day or a week can massively add up. That's number one. Number two, and this is one that I stumbled upon myself when I had GERD, because remember, I did have Barrett's esophagus. And if I remember, I'll throw up the medical imaging, and I'll throw up some of the paperwork, because I have it framed somewhere in my house. When I got the report back to my Barrett's esophagus, they didn't say reverse, they said it wasn't there. So they said it never happened in the first place, but I have the paperwork for that too. So either way, reverse the Barrett's, reverse the scarring and everything. It was acetylcholine, right? So if we look at our acetylcholine, what can happen is certain people can have a weak esophageal sphincter because it's not getting enough innervation. So acetylcholine is not firing enough. Now, I've seen progress with acetylcholine from every variety. I personally stumbled upon this by accident by taking alpha GPC in very copious amounts, 900 milligrams, 1200 milligrams, something like that. But injectable acetylcholine or injectable choline chloride at about 100 milligrams tends to work pretty decently well. Excuse me. And also phosphatidylcholine. So if I had to say just one for the sake of this video, I would say alpha GPC about 600 to 900 milligrams daily. That's a good place to begin. Now, what else actually increases the tone of that sphincter? Fiber. Fiber actually does a really cool job of increasing that actual tone. Now, the problem with saying fiber is we as a species, we should have been taking in, I forget what the numbers were, like 100 plus 200 grams of fiber per day. That was biologically how we evolved. The problem is we've evolved out of that. So that conversation doesn't really hold up anymore. But I do think it's smart to slowly work up your fiber intake. And once you kind of top out, you start having GI problems, hold it there, and ideally over time work that up more. But it's pretty tough in today's society given we've had so much time to kind of evolve out of that. So that's also why biomes are causing GERD in the first place as well. So it is a fiber problem. Now the fiber conversation is very deep. I did start taking the loam, L-O-A-M product as a fiber, which I'm actually a pretty big fan of. It has some very basic fiber sources, so that's L-O-A-M. I'll do 2 scoops of that per day, and I'm slowly working up my fiber intake. That has a pretty good, decent blend, and for me, I haven't seen any bloating from it. I've seen a good amount of change to my Vitract gut test, and with a couple people as well, so that's been my preferred. I will always cycle between different products for everything. To find out what is the best one. Because for a while, it was a different fiber product. Now I'm starting to slowly favor this one. So we're gonna kind of go back and forth. Thorn had a good probiotic or a good fiber product for a little bit, and different products for different purposes. But for this video, keep it simple. I'd go with 1 scoop of loam per day. And loam, I hope that's how you pronounce it. Loam, whatever. Also, stimulants. Couple things here. We want to lower things that will weaken our esophageal sphincter tone. So stimulants like coffee, caffeine are a big one. Things like oxaloacetate, which I've talked about a ton before. At higher doses, that can cause weakening of that tone. And then also, we have a medication like tadalafil, so Cialis, which at higher doses can do the same thing, can actually cause weakening of that tone. So in terms of fixing your esophageal sphincter tone, that's kind of number 1, 2, 3, 4, top 4, right? Now the hiatal hernia. This one is a little bit harder. We are not going to be talking about actual surgeries. For certain people that have a lower degree of a hiatal hernia, you can slowly move things back into place because it's a gliding problem where it glides above. We're going to glide it back down and move it back downward. So this literally is generally done with exercises and avoiding other exercises. And also, actually, I think we're going to pair this with number 4, which is our because we want to lower our intra-abdominal pressure. I think these kind of go best together because we're looking at doing actual drills and then avoiding other things. So first of all, hiatal hernia wise, I think the heel drops are the most popular. That's one you'll first thing in the morning, take a glass of water, you'll go up on your toes and drop down hard. Drop down hard on your heels. Excuse me. Hope that wasn't appropriate. You do that anywhere from 5, 10, 20, 30 times. You could slowly work it up over time and slowly using the pressure of the fluids coming into your system to pull the system down. You can also do this later after heavier meals, but usually number 1 is going to be those heel drops. They can work massively. Now, from there, what else comes in? Usually avoiding intra-abdominal pressure, but fixing the tone and the actual ability to isometrically contract that abdominal structure. What also happens is a flexibility problem. So what we want to start doing is you can do a couple different bridge-based exercises. So when you are on your back, so knees up, heels on the ground, and slowly like a glute thrust, like a glute bridge, hold up but contract those abs. Same thing, go over like in a plank-based position. And we're not trying to create so much intra-abdominal pressure. We're trying more to create stability. We're not trying to hypertrophy the ab structure. We're trying to move things back into place by shifting mechanics a little bit. And again, this is a little bit hard to do, but over time for someone who has a very minor hiatal hernia, it will move things back into place. So bridges, we like to do a lot of different stretches, bending and things in that transverse plane. So I'm gonna do a lot of different, we're gonna say bending and then twisting. Things you want to avoid. So let me clarify this. When I say no ab training there, I mean we're not trying to load the abdominal cavity to the point to where we get more intra-abdominal pressure. So any kind of a crunching pattern, you're squeezing pretty hard. Heavy loading of the spine, like a barbell back squat, that's creating more intra-abdominal pressure. All the things like that, just for this period, because you want to bring that back in over time, you want to slowly avoid. So I hate saying this. We're doing more of the movement patterns. We're doing more of the basic isometric exercises, the opposite of the hypertrophy, the opposite of the strength world. Excuse me. We're trying to just go ahead and work on the mobility, the flexibility, the pliability, and the contractility of our abdominal tissue without loading them, because we don't want to create more intra-abdominal pressure. What else causes intra-abdominal pressure? Food volume, right? So right out of the gate, we want to start lowering food volume. Now, obviously, the easiest way to do that is going to be actually lowering calories, but you could also just stop having as many voluminous foods. So this could mean going from a high carb, high protein diet to a lower protein, lower carb, higher fat diet, because the total volume is just going to be less because you can make up the calories. Now, while saying that, if we look at that increase or decrease in hydrochloric acid, that then somewhat changes the conversation, because if we go over here and we just say hydrochloric acid, we're going to say we need to increase it or we need to decrease it. So if you have a high amount of calories, which is all dependent on the person, not just the calories themselves, but the food selection, that can be the problem in and of itself. So even if you can work down food volume and keep the same calories, if it's not fixing it, it could be a food selection or a total caloric load problem. So if we're trying to lower, because you're producing so much hydrochloric acid to break down all the foods you're eating, we are going to first look at the actual food sources. And then, like we said, say that doesn't work, then we're going to look to lower calories. That is usually the easiest way to start pushing things forward. What did we also talk about? Potential uses for parietal cell products or proton pump inhibitors. So if we are using something like a PPI, this is going to be something for 12 to 20 weeks while we are lowering our calories, while we're fixing our food sources, while we are doing our inversion table, while we're doing all these things to fix it. It's a Band-Aid. Band-Aids are more than fine, but Band-Aids aren't supposed to stay on forever. So you can also, if you want more of a longer term option, or you could bridge these two, right? Something like famotidine. Now, famotidine, super cool Peptide, over the counter, you can buy it. Famotidine works on the entire parietal cell and histamine conversation to modulate proton. Doesn't abolish proton, it modulates it. We said before, balance, right? We want to balance protons in the gut. Now, PPIs abolish proton. So long term, that's what causes the stomach cancers. We don't want to abolish it, we want to manage it, but that can be, depending on how bad you are up here. Like whenever I originally was diagnosed with Barrett's esophagus, I used an initial PPI, and then I transitioned over to famotidine, and I slowly worked that off over time. You could do it that way, or you could do either, or you could layer them in with each other, depending on how bad you are. But famotidine, this could be literally done over the course of years, and I've never seen famotidine long-term at moderate doses, 40-ish milligrams or less, cause any kind of a stomach cancer, polyp, or other dysfunction. So of the two, if we're trying to be more pharmacologically safe, I would go more so with a famotidine over a PPI, like an omeprazole or all those kind of azoles. That's what the PPIs end in. But again, time and place for everything. But those are for the people who are trying to lower their hydrochloric acid contribution. Now, if we are trying to increase our hydrochloric acid, this is pretty simple. We're looking at betaine and pepsin. That works 9 times out of 10. So for betaine and for pepsin, dosages could be anywhere from about 350 to 750 milligrams, all the way up to a full gram in certain cases for betaine. So we'll say 350 mgs plus, and pepsin could be anywhere from 10 to 50 milligrams plus. Depending on the product you get, how you respond, the amount of fat in that meal, the amount of carbohydrates and proteins in that meal, it's going to change so much. But in general, using something like those to increase your hydrochloric acid content is kind of the basic way to do it. You can do this on a per meal basis. You can do this on your biggest meal of the day. There's so many ways to do it. There's also other things like slippery elm. There are different things like if we're trying actually going back to lowering hydrochloric acid, something like potassium bicarbonate at about 500-ish milligrams can alter and lower those hydrochloric acid levels. You can slowly get more into the gut-based world, but that's what's going to lead us to our next conversation. In general, though, if I had to just pick two things to increase hydrochloric acid contribution because of low stomach acid, betaine and pepsin works 9 times out of 10. So for those 9 people, you're going to be solid. Now, others, right? Because what else has to happen? Depending on where you're at, and this is a tough one. When you have GERD, there's almost always gut dysbiosis, right? So a Vitract gut test is going to be big. There's almost always esophageal damage. So that esophagus has been damaged. There's been fibrosis that you have to reverse. So there's always gut dysbiosis and then tissue-based damage, mainly of the fibrotic nature. So what can we do, right? Couple of different things. First of all, I'm a big fan of pulse electromagnetic field therapy on the stomach. I personally love the ARC pen from Brandon Alamani. I always screw that up where the L and the M is. Awesome, dude. That ARC device has completely changed my gut. You'll put it over your stomach or any PEMF device you have. It's going to alter the magnetic fields around bacteria. So what it can do is actually improve the fields around more of your positive players, more your bifidos and whatevers. And then it'll actually, I don't want to say weaken the field around the negative bacteria, but like a spore probiotic, it'll separate them. And you can easily excrete and break out those biofilms and endotoxins of more negative strains, E. coli, things like that, but keep the good. So PEMF technology, 10 minutes per day, depending on the product and machine you have, can be amazing. Then we talked about, and this is where it's tough, the whole probiotic conversation, because you not just have supplements, you have fermented foods. One of the problems with certain fermented foods is it can skew hydrochloric acid ratios. So depending on the person and the situation, if it's high or low hydrochloric acid, you may want to be a little cautious on your fermented foods. But when we're looking at the actual probiotic conversation, there's a lot. My favorite go-to has been from the Gut Institute, Gracie over there, Dr. Gracie. She's absolutely amazing. I personally love the main bifido product she has. She has a Maximus and a Mojo product. I tend to like people doing either those every day, 1 cap in the morning, or we'll go every other day, because the Mojo product also has the actual spore-based probiotic which can handle the magnetism. So with gut healing in general, although you want to break apart biofilms and slowly kill off and then repopulate, there's all these different ways to do it. You can also just get so many good bacteria, it will crowd out and push out the poor bacteria. And I say poor bacteria for lack of a better word. It's tough when you have so many different strains to put this kind of a seminar together. So we're making it blanket, easy words, good and bad bacteria. Again, it's not that simple, but you get what I'm saying. So as a basic rule of thumb, look into something on the probiotic spectrum. If you do have something like some kind of a pathogen that does have a biofilm, that'd be something like biocidin to break apart that biofilm and slowly repopulate more positive bacterial strains. So more longums and things of that nature. So the whole PEMF world, the fermented foods and probiotic world are massive. Then the whole peptide space. And this is where there's a lot. In the peptide space for gut healing, if there is a tight junction problem, so this could be more of a celiac individual or someone who is having spilling out of different proteins that's causing a global histamine-based response and or global inflammatory response. It could be flushing, it could be so many things, but once you get the response from a food, it's generally tight junction related. It could be a bunch of things. In this scenario, say it's tight junction related, that'd be something like lorazepam acetate. So lorazepam would come in 250 micrograms AMP. I'm assuming it's an oral dose. There are injectables, but we won't go there for now. Lorazepam comes in to tighten loose junctions, right? Then sticking with the peptide conversation, if we have lorazepam in play, the GHKs used orally, the BPC-157s orally are going to do a good job, and KPVs as well, of healing overall gut function and pulling down gut inflammation. So those come in massively well, right? So if we kind of, actually I should do this, right? I should write this out. We have the ARC device, big one, and then we have the actual gut institute, mainly the Maximus and Mojo products. And then we said fermented foods, kind of be careful. Then with peptides, there's a lot here. So we would do lorazepatide for loose junctions. Then we have our whole plethora of BPC, different strains of TB, so more thymosin beta, the full variety, KPV, doing a lot of the healing and the reduction in inflammation. You can also get your own preferred injectable route of BPC 157 and take 500 micrograms, put it in about 6 to 12 ounces of water, and slowly just kind of drink it down, and then don't have anything else for about 5 or 10 minutes. Just let those proteins actually sit in that esophagus. That can be an amazing way to actually heal your Barrett's and reverse your Barrett's as well. That's what I did, and it worked extremely well. You generally do that for at least 8 to 12 weeks, so it's a longer term protocol, but it works very well. Then there's good old VD11. I think VD11 has healed more guts than any other peptide out there. The problem is because it's so new, because my group are the first people that are really trying it, we still need a lot more data. But as of now, we have, at least 150 plus people that utilized it. We've seen improvements to ViTrac gut scores. We've seen point out gut inflammation. We've seen almost every bit of gut physiology and biochemistry change and improve with VD11. So that's an overall player, which is absolutely cool. And we are going to stop there because there's a lot. But generally in this whole other category, we're trying to heal up the damage done to our esophagus. We're trying to then fix the gut biome itself. And that's a whole seminar in and of itself, but I wanted to make sure we mention it because you can't just reverse the GERD by doing everything we talked about without also assessing the biome. But that's a whole conversation that adds a ton of a lot more. So plus, because there's a lot more to talk about. But this is basic biology, understanding how we get this gastric irritation, understanding the high amount of hydrochloric acid, understanding the damage it does to our system, looking and breaking down the system as a whole and telling you how to figure it out. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. Check out thepepcoach.com, and I will see you next time. And one last note, we want to watch out for our GLPs. Why? Because they are slowing down gastric emptying. Retatrutide can sometimes increase that actually at lower doses. But in general, if you're doing all this stuff and still having problems, check your medications. Things that will slow down gastric emptying, like the majority of these GLPs, can cause more problems than they're actually helping with. GLPs are amazing. Time and a place for everything. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. Check out thepepcoach.com, and I'll see you guys